My name is Aria, and I'm 34 years old. I used to believe I had the perfect life with my husband Derek. We were happy, successful, and planning our future together. My younger sister Natalie had always been close to me despite our differences. When she moved in temporarily, things started changing. I noticed strange behaviors, unexplained absences, and mysterious texts. If only I had known what was happening behind my back. Before I reveal the shocking truth I discovered, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want to hear more real-life stories that might just save your relationships. I met Derek at a charity auction in Denver 8 years ago. He was bidding on a painting that I desperately wanted for my office. When he noticed my disappointment after being outbid, he approached me with a charming smile and introduced himself. Derek was a successful architect with his own firm, tall with dark brown hair and the kindest blue eyes I had ever seen. I was immediately drawn to his confident yet humble demeanor. At the time, I was working as a financial consultant for a large company advising clients on investment strategies and retirement plans. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. I remember being nervous changing my outfit 3 times before settling on a simple blue dress. Derek arrived with a single white rose and a genuine smile that put me at ease instantly. We talked for hours about our careers, dreams, and families. The connection was immediate and undeniable. Over the next few months, our relationship blossomed. Derek would surprise me with small, thoughtful gifts like a book by my favorite author or tickets to a play I had mentioned wanting to see. He listened intently when I spoke and remembered the little details that most people overlooked. After 6 months of dating, Derek took me to the mountains for a weekend getaway and told me he was falling in love with me. Under a sky full of stars, I told him I felt the same way. 2 years into our relationship, Derek proposed during a trip to San Francisco. We were walking across the Golden Gate Bridge when he suddenly stopped, pulled out a small velvet box, and got down on one knee. The ring was perfect, a vintage-style diamond that he had custom designed. Through tears of joy, I said yes, and we celebrated with champagne at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the bay. Our wedding was intimate with only close friends and family in attendance. We wrote our own vows, promising to support each other through good times and bad, to communicate openly, and to choose each other every day. My parents adored Derek from the start, especially my father, who appreciated Derek's strong work ethic and integrity. The first 5 years of our marriage were everything I had hoped for, and more. We established a comfortable routine, balancing our careers with quality time together. We traveled when we could, exploring new cities and making memories. We discussed starting a family and agreed to begin trying within the next year. Derek was excited about becoming a father, and I was looking forward to creating our own family traditions. My relationship with my younger sister Natalie has always been complex. Growing up, I was the responsible one, always following rules and excelling academically, while Natalie was more free-spirited and rebellious. Despite being 5 years younger, Natalie had a confidence that I sometimes envied. She would speak her mind without fear of consequences, while I carefully considered every word. Our parents relied on me to set a good example, which often put pressure on our relationship. When Natalie started high school, she began to struggle with her grades and fell in with a crowd that our parents disapproved of. I remember many nights sitting with her at our kitchen table, helping her study for tests or listening as she vented about our parents' strict rules. During one particularly difficult period when Natalie was 16, she was caught shoplifting with friends. Our parents were furious and grounded her for a month. It was during this time that I truly stepped into the protective older sister role. I defended her to our parents, arguing that she deserved a second chance and promising to keep a closer eye on her. I visited her room every evening, bringing snacks and keeping her company during her punishment. This pattern continued throughout our lives, with me always stepping in to help Natalie through difficult situations. When she dropped out of college after 2 years to pursue a career in fashion merchandising, I supported her decision even though our parents were disappointed. When she lost her first apartment because she couldn't manage her finances, I let her stay with me for 3 months until she got back on her feet. Looking back, I can see the signs of Natalie's jealousy, but at the time I was blind to them. When I got a promotion at work, Natalie's congratulations seemed forced. When Derek proposed, Natalie's enthusiasm waned after the initial excitement. She would make subtle comments about how lucky I was, implying that I somehow didn't deserve my happiness. Most recently, Natalie had been dating a guy named James for about 3 years. He was kind and stable, working as an IT specialist for a healthcare company. James clearly adored Natalie and was saving for an engagement ring when suddenly Natalie broke things off. She claimed they had grown apart and wanted different things, but offered no specific reasons. This breakup occurred just 2 weeks before she asked if she could stay with us. 6 months ago, Derek and I purchased our dream home in a quiet suburb of Denver. It was a beautiful 2-story house with 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen for entertaining, and a backyard where we envisioned our future children playing. We spent weekends painting walls, assembling furniture, and making the space truly ours. Derek even converted one of the spare bedrooms into a home office for me, complete with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the garden. We were still settling into our new home when Natalie called in tears one evening. She explained that she had lost her job as a boutique manager due to store closures and couldn't afford her rent anymore. Without hesitation, I offered her our guest bedroom until she could get back on her feet. When I hung up the phone and told Derek about my offer, I noticed his immediate frown. "For how long?" he asked, his voice tense. "Just until she finds a new job," I assured him. "A few weeks, maybe a month or 2 at most." Derek sighed and ran his hand through his hair, a habit when he was stressed. "I know she's your sister, but our house just started feeling like home. And you know how Natalie can be. A few weeks could easily turn into 6 months." I understood his concerns. Natalie had a history of overstaying her welcome and not respecting boundaries. But she was my sister, and she needed help. After some discussion, Derek reluctantly agreed, and Natalie moved in the following weekend. At first, everything seemed fine. Natalie was appreciative and helpful, cooking dinner occasionally and keeping her space tidy. She spent most days applying for jobs online and networking with former colleagues. Derek was polite but distant, often retreating to his home office when Natalie was in common areas of the house. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment things began to change. It was about 3 weeks after Natalie moved in. I came home early from work with a migraine and overheard Derek and Natalie laughing in the kitchen. There was nothing inherently suspicious about their conversation, but when I entered the room, they both jumped slightly as if caught doing something wrong. Derek quickly explained they were just sharing stories about difficult clients, but something about their reaction felt off. That was the beginning of the changes in our household, the moment that marked the start of what would become the most painful chapter of my life. If only I had paid more attention to the subtle shift in energy that day, perhaps I could have prevented what was to come. The first sign that something was wrong came about a month after Natalie moved in. Derek, who had always been punctual and predictable, began working late without much notice. He would text around 6 p.m. saying he needed to finish something at the office and wouldn't be home until 8 or 9. This happened once or twice a week at first, then gradually increased to 3 or 4 times. When Derek was home, his mood seemed to fluctuate wildly. Some evenings he was overly affectionate, bringing me flowers for no reason or suggesting we watch my favorite movies. Other nights he was irritable and distant, snapping at small things like a dish left in the sink or a light left on in an empty room. When I asked if everything was okay, he would blame work stress or not getting enough sleep. Physical intimacy between us declined noticeably. Derek, who had always been a passionate and attentive partner, now seemed distracted during our intimate moments. He would initiate less frequently, and when I approached him, he would sometimes claim he was too tired or had an early meeting the next day. We went from being intimate several times a week to barely once sometimes, with weeks in between. I also noticed Derek spending more time on his appearance. He joined a new gym closer to his office and started going 4 times a week instead of his usual 2. He bought new cologne, updated his wardrobe with more stylish clothes, and even scheduled a consultation about laser eye surgery to replace the glasses he occasionally wore. When I commented positively on these changes, he seemed pleased but deflected by saying it was just time for an update. While Derek was changing, Natalie was becoming increasingly interested in our schedules, particularly mine. She would casually ask about my workday over breakfast, inquiring what time I expected to be home and if I had any evening plans. I thought she was just making conversation or wanted to know when she could have the house to herself, so I answered honestly without suspicion. "Will you be working late again tomorrow?" she asked one morning as I prepared my coffee. "Actually, yes. I have a client meeting that probably won't end until 7, then I might grab dinner with Sarah afterward." Natalie nodded thoughtfully. "That's nice. It's good you're making time for friends even with your busy schedule." Later that day, she texted to ask if I was still planning to be out late, claiming she wanted to know if she should save dinner for me. It seemed considerate at the time, but in retrospect, she was tracking my movements with unusual precision. Natalie also began asking pointed questions about my relationship with Derek. She would bring up topics like how we resolved disagreements or whether we had discussed children recently. Sometimes she would make leading statements like, "I noticed Derek seemed quiet at dinner. Are you guys okay?" These comments were subtle enough to seem like normal concern, but frequent enough to plant seeds of doubt in my mind. Another concerning change was Natalie's appearance. She had always dressed well, but now she was putting extra effort into her looks when she was just staying at home. She would wear form-fitting clothes, style her hair, and apply full makeup even on days when she had no job interviews scheduled. I remember one Saturday morning finding her in the kitchen wearing a silk camisole and shorts, her hair freshly curled, making breakfast when Derek came downstairs. The first truly suspicious incident happened about 2 months after Natalie moved in. I came home from work unexpectedly early because a client canceled our afternoon meeting. As I walked toward the bathroom to take some pain relievers for a headache, I heard laughter coming from inside. It was definitely Natalie's voice, and then I heard Derek's distinct chuckle in response. I paused, confused by why they would be in the bathroom together. I knocked on the door and there was immediate silence followed by the sound of water running. After a moment, Natalie opened the door with a smile that seemed forced. "Oh, hey sis, you're home early," she said, her cheeks slightly flushed. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to peek past her into the bathroom. Derek appeared behind her holding a plunger. The toilet was clogged and Natalie came to tell me. "I was just fixing it for her." He smiled casually. "All set now." "I was telling Derek about this disaster date I went on last weekend," Natalie added. "The guy was such a mess it was hilarious." Their explanation made logical sense, and I had no concrete reason to doubt them. But something felt off. Why close the bathroom door for a simple plumbing issue? Why did they both look slightly guilty when I knocked? Later that week, I was looking for the charger to our digital camera when I accidentally saw a text notification pop up on Derek's phone. It was from someone saved as AJ from work, but the message preview read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last time was amazing." When Derek came home, I casually mentioned seeing the text and asked who AJ was. He explained without hesitation that AJ was a new client, a woman named Amanda Johnson who owned a boutique hotel and was excited about their design meeting tomorrow. His explanation was smooth and immediate, making me feel silly for my momentary suspicion. "She's enthusiastic about the project," Derek said with a shrug. "We had a great initial consultation, and I think we're going to come up with something really special for her hotel lobby." I nodded and let it go, pushing away the uneasy feeling in my stomach. After all, this was Derek, my husband of 6 years, the man who had never given me any reason to doubt his faithfulness before. And Natalie was my sister, the girl I had protected and supported all her life. I wanted to believe in both of them, to trust that my growing discomfort was just imagination, or perhaps a result of the adjustment period of having a third person in our home. But as the days passed, more small incidents accumulated, each one on its own, easily explained away. yet together forming a pattern that became increasingly difficult to ignore. As the weeks went by, the evidence continued to mount, making it harder to ignore my growing suspicions. Derek's late nights at work became more frequent, and his explanations began to sound rehearsed. One evening I called his office around 8 p.m. when he said he'd be working late, only to have the security guard inform me that Derek had left the building at 6. When he came home around 9:30 that night, I casually mentioned that I had tried to reach him at the office. He barely missed a beat before explaining that he had gone to a client's site to look at the space after hours when it was empty. It was a reasonable explanation, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine as he spoke. The next day, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in Derek's jacket pocket from La Maison, an upscale French restaurant downtown. The receipt showed dinner for two with wine and dessert, totaling over $200. Dated the previous evening when Derek claimed to be working. When I confronted him with it, he said it was a business dinner with a potential client who wanted to discuss a large residential project. "Why didn't you mention it last night?" I asked. "It slipped my mind," he replied, busying himself with his laptop. The meeting was productive but exhausting, and I just wanted to shower and sleep when I got home. Around this same time, I noticed Natalie suddenly had new things despite her continued unemployment. She came home one day with a designer handbag that I knew cost at least $500. When I commented on it, she claimed it was a gift from a friend who worked at the boutique and got an employee discount. A week later, she was wearing new diamond stud earrings that she vaguely attributed to savings from my last job. The most damning piece of evidence came when I was helping Derek pack for an overnight business trip to Colorado Springs. As I grabbed one of his dress shirts from the closet, I caught a distinct whiff of perfume that wasn't mine. It was a floral, slightly musky scent that I immediately recognized as Natalie's signature fragrance, one she had worn for years. My heart pounding, I brought the shirt to my nose and inhaled again to confirm. There was no mistake. I confronted Derek immediately, holding out the shirt. "Why does this smell like Natalie's perfume?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Derek looked startled but recovered quickly. "Oh, that must have happened when I was helping her move some boxes in her room yesterday. She was reorganizing, and I think she had just sprayed her perfume when I came in to help. It probably got on my shirt when we were lifting things." It was a plausible explanation. I had been at work all day, so I couldn't verify whether Natalie had indeed been reorganizing her room. When I casually asked her about it later, she confirmed Derek's story without hesitation, even showing me her newly arranged closet. "Your husband is so sweet," she said with a smile. "James would never have helped me like that. Derek spent almost an hour helping me move furniture and hang pictures." As my suspicions grew, I decided to confide in my best friend Sarah. We had been friends since college, and she was one of the few people who knew both Derek and Natalie well. We met for coffee one Saturday, while Derek was supposedly at the gym and Natalie was at a job interview. I feel crazy even saying this out loud. I told Sarah, stirring my latte absently. But I'm starting to think something might be going on between Derek and Natalie. Sarah's eyes widened, but to her credit, she didn't immediately dismiss my concerns. "What makes you think that?" she asked carefully. I laid out all the evidence: the late nights, the unexplained expenses, the perfume on the shirt, the strange behaviors, and the overall feeling that something had shifted in my home. As I spoke, saying it all together for the first time, the pattern seemed even more suspicious than when I was turning over each incident individually in my mind. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I hate to say this, but those are classic signs of cheating. The question is whether it's with Natalie or someone else." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I don't have any real proof, just a bunch of circumstances that could all have innocent explanations." "You need to find out for sure before you confront them," Sarah advised. "Maybe set up a nanny cam or check his phone when he's asleep. I know it feels invasive, but if something is going on, you deserve to know the truth." I nodded, though the thought of spying on my husband made me deeply uncomfortable. I don't want to violate his privacy. What if I'm wrong? What if this is all in my head, and I destroy my marriage and my relationship with my sister because I'm paranoid? Trust your gut, Aria, Sarah said firmly. In the years I've known you, you've never been the jealous or suspicious type. If you're feeling this strongly that something's wrong, there's probably a reason. I left our coffee date with a heavy heart, but a strengthened resolve. I needed to know the truth one way or another. I just didn't realize how soon that truth would reveal itself, or how much more devastating it would be than I had imagined. For weeks I had been struggling with insomnia, lying awake at night as my mind raced with suspicions and doubts. My doctor prescribed a mild sleeping pill to help me get some rest. On a Tuesday night, I took one before bed, grateful for the heavy drowsiness that quickly overtook me as I lay down next to Derek, who was already asleep. I'm not sure what woke me sometime after midnight. Perhaps it was a sound, or maybe just my subconscious alerting me that something wasn't right. I reached out to check my phone for the time and realized it wasn't on my nightstand where I always placed it before sleeping. Derek was still beside me, breathing deeply in sleep, but my phone was missing. Still groggy from the medication, I slowly got out of bed and made my way to the hallway. A dim light was coming from the living room downstairs. I carefully descended the stairs, holding onto the railing to steady myself against the lingering effects of the sleeping pill. When I reached the bottom, I saw my phone sitting on the coffee table in the living room, its screen dark. I picked it up confused about how it had ended up there, when I distinctly remembered placing it on my nightstand before taking my medication. I pressed the home button to check the time, and was surprised to see several notifications for sent messages that I had no memory of writing. My heart began to race as I opened my messaging app and saw a conversation with Derek from just an hour earlier while I had been soundly asleep. The messages were shocking. Written as though from me to my husband, they contained declarations that I wanted a divorce, that I wasn't happy anymore, that I hadn't been for some time. The texts claimed I had been seeing someone else and had already consulted a lawyer about dividing our assets. They said I had been trying to find the right time to tell him and was relieved to finally have it out in the open. Derek's replies showed confusion, then anger. He asked who I was seeing, demanded to know how long this had been going on, and said we needed to talk in person immediately. The final message from me said we would discuss everything tomorrow and that he should take time to process before reacting. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I hadn't written any of these messages. Someone had taken my phone while I was asleep and fabricated an entire conversation about me wanting to end my marriage. As the realization dawned on me, I heard a faint sound coming from the kitchen. Moving quietly, I followed the noise and peered around the corner. There was Natalie sitting at our kitchen island, scrolling through what appeared to be Derek's phone, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. She was biting her lip nervously, clearly focused on whatever she was reading. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The late nights, the strange behaviors, the unexplained expenses, the perfume on Derek's shirt. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't in my head. Something was definitely happening between my husband and my sister, and now it seemed they were actively plotting against me. I silently retreated to the stairs, my mind racing despite the lingering fog of the sleeping medication. I needed to be smart about this. Confronting Natalie now while half asleep and emotionally raw wouldn't give me the answers I needed. I needed evidence, undeniable proof that would force them both to admit the truth. Back in bed, I placed my phone on the nightstand where it belonged and lay awake for hours planning my next steps. The fake divorce texts were clearly meant to create a scenario where Derek could leave me without admitting to an affair, perhaps even making me look like the villain in our marriage's end. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but it also steeled my resolve. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me or rewrite our story to suit their narrative. The next morning, I acted as though nothing had changed. I made coffee, kissed Derek goodbye as he left for work, and chatted briefly with Natalie about her job search. All the while, I was taking mental notes of their behaviors, looking for signs that they were continuing their deception. Derek seemed tense, his smile not quite reaching his eyes when he looked at me. Natalie was overly cheerful, asking detailed questions about my day's schedule. I gave them the performance of my life, pretending to be oblivious while inside I was crumbling. Once I was alone, I began to formulate a plan. This wasn't just about confirming my suspicions anymore. I already knew the truth. This was about gathering incontrovertible evidence and confronting them on my terms. I wasn't going to be the victim in their story. I was going to write my own ending. After discovering the fake divorce texts, I knew I needed a strategic approach to uncover the full extent of Derek and Natalie's betrayal. Simply accusing them would lead to denials and possibly more elaborate lies. I needed hard evidence that they couldn't explain away. I started by downloading a voice recording app on my phone that would activate with sound. I placed it under the coffee table in the living room and in my bedroom when I wasn't there. I also set up my old laptop in the guest room closet with the camera facing out through a small opening in the door set to record motion. Next, I reached out to Sarah for help. I explained what I had discovered and asked if she could assist me with surveillance when I couldn't be at home. Sarah, always loyal, agreed without hesitation. "I'll take a few days off work," she offered. "I can park down the street and keep an eye on the house when you're gone." I also contacted a lawyer discreetly, not to discuss divorce yet, but to understand my rights and options if my suspicions were confirmed. The lawyer advised me to document everything and secure my financial accounts as a precaution. 2 days later, I told Derek and Natalie that I had to attend a 2-day financial planning conference in Boulder. In reality, I booked a hotel room in downtown Denver, close enough to return quickly if necessary. "I'll miss you," Derek said, kissing me goodbye with what now felt like hollow affection. "Take care, sis," Natalie added with a hug. "Don't worry about us. We'll be fine here." I'm sure they would be, I thought bitterly. I left the house on Thursday morning, making a show of packing my overnight bag and conference materials. Once out of sight, I drove to Sarah's apartment where we established our plan. She would park on a side street with a view of our house and text me if Derek and Natalie left together. Meanwhile, I would stay at the hotel monitoring the security app connected to my hidden laptop camera. Around 7 p.m. that evening, Sarah's text came through. They just left together in Dee's car, both dressed up. My heart sank, even as I felt vindicated. I instructed Sarah to follow them discreetly while I checked out of the hotel and drove back toward our neighborhood. Sarah tracked them to the Oxford Hotel, one of Denver's most luxurious historic hotels downtown. I met her there, my stomach in knots, as we entered the lobby. We spotted them in the hotel's upscale restaurant, seated in a corner booth. Derek was wearing a suit I had given him for his birthday, and Natalie was in a black dress I had never seen before, her hand resting on his arm as they laughed intimately. I took out my phone and recorded a short video of them from a distance, capturing the moment Derek leaned over to kiss her. Not a quick peck, but a lingering kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. "I think I'm going to be sick," I whispered to Sarah, who held my arm supportively. "Let's go," she said gently. "You have what you need." We left before they could spot us, and I returned home to continue gathering evidence. While the house was empty, I searched Derek's home office and found a hotel receipt in his desk drawer for a stay at a mountain resort 3 weeks earlier. During a weekend, he had told me he was at a design conference. The receipt showed charges for champagne and a couple's massage. In Natalie's room, I found a journal hidden under her mattress. With shaking hands, I opened it and began to read. The entries detailed her growing attraction to Derek, starting shortly after she moved in with us. She wrote about their first kiss, which happened in our kitchen while I was at a late client meeting. She described their secret rendezvous during my work hours, and the guilt she occasionally felt quickly rationalized away. One entry made me freeze. "Derek is still torn about leaving Aria. He says he loves me, but he's worried about hurting her. I suggested we find a way to make her the one who ends things, so he doesn't have to feel guilty. If Aria initiates the divorce, Derek can be with me without being the bad guy. I have a plan that might work." The journal confirmed what I had already pieced together. The fake divorce texts were Natalie's idea. a calculated plan to manipulate the situation so Derek could leave me for her without taking responsibility for the affair. They weren't just betraying me, they were actively conspiring to make me the villain in their story. The most painful revelation came near the end of the journal. Natalie admitted that she had deliberately ended her relationship with James because she had developed feelings for Derek. She wrote that she had strategically asked to move in with us, not because she was in financial trouble, but because she wanted to be closer to Derek. The job loss was real, but she hadn't been seriously looking for new employment, instead focusing her energy on strengthening her connection with my husband. Armed with the video hotel receipts, journal entries, and the fake text messages, I felt a strange calm settle over me. There was no more doubt, no more second-guessing myself. I had all the evidence I needed to confront them both. I copied the most damning journal entries, backed up the video to my cloud storage, and collected all physical evidence in a folder. Then I placed everything on our dining room table and waited for them to return home, prepared for the confrontation that would change all of our lives forever. I spent hours preparing for the confrontation, arranging the evidence on the dining room table, like exhibits in a court case. The journal copies, hotel receipts, screenshots of the fake divorce texts, and my phone queued up to play the video I had taken at the restaurant. I wanted everything laid out clearly, leaving no room for denial or manipulation. Before they returned, I made 2 important phone calls. First, I called my lawyer to update her on the situation and confirm our meeting for the following day. Then I called my parents, telling them that I was having serious marriage problems and might need to come stay with them soon. I didn't share the details yet, wanting to have the confrontation first, but I needed them to be prepared. "Is everything all right, sweetheart?" my mother asked, concern evident in her voice. "Not really, Mom, but it will be," I replied, surprised by my own calmness. "I'll explain everything tomorrow. Just know that I might need a place to stay for a while." "Our door is always open, you know that," she assured me. Around 11 p.m., I heard Derek's car pull into the driveway. I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders, determined to maintain my composure. The front door opened, and I heard their voices, intimate and hushed, followed by quiet laughter that abruptly stopped when they saw the light on in the dining room. "Aria," Derek called out, confusion in his voice. "I thought you were at your conference." I remained silent, seated at the head of the dining table, watching as they walked in together. Their expressions shifted from surprise to alarm as they registered my presence and then noticed the documents spread across the table. "What's all this?" Derek asked, his voice tight. Natalie stood slightly behind him, her face pale. "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. "We need to talk." They exchanged a quick glance before cautiously taking seats, both visibly tense. I let the silence stretch for a moment, watching them squirm under my steady gaze. "I know everything," I finally said, my voice remarkably steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "The affair, the fake divorce texts, all of it." Derek immediately went into denial mode. "What are you talking about? What fake texts?" I slid the screenshots across the table. "These texts, Derek. The ones sent from my phone while I was asleep on sleeping medication. The ones where I supposedly told you I wanted a divorce because I was seeing someone else." I turned to Natalie. "You took my phone that night, didn't you? Thought you'd create a convenient narrative where I was the unfaithful one?" Natalie's eyes widened, but she shook her head. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're not making sense, Aria." Without a word, I pressed play on my phone, and the video of them at the restaurant appeared on the screen. Derek kissing Natalie passionately, their hands intertwined on the table. I watched their faces as they saw themselves, the denial draining away, replaced by the realization that they had been caught. Next, I showed them the hotel receipt I had found, and finally the copied pages from Natalie's journal. As they looked at the evidence, Derek's face flushed with anger while Natalie's crumpled in defeat. "You went through my things," Natalie accused weakly. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's what concerns you, that I invaded your privacy while you were sleeping with my husband and plotting to frame me." Derek finally dropped the facade. "Aria, this isn't what it looks like." Really? I interrupted. Because it looks like my husband and my sister have been having an affair behind my back and then conspired to make me look like the bad guy so you could both walk away guilt-free. Please tell me what part of that I'm misunderstanding. Derek ran his hands through his hair, his posture deflating. It just happened. We didn't plan it. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened, I repeated flatly. Multiple times in multiple hotels, for months. That doesn't just happen, Derek. That's a series of deliberate choices you both made knowing exactly how much it would hurt me. Natalie began to cry, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Aria. It started as just a physical thing, but then we developed feelings and we didn't know how to tell you. So instead you decided to manipulate me with fake texts, make me think I was losing my mind, turn me into the villain of your love story. My voice cracked slightly, the first sign of my composure slipping. Derek reached across the table toward me, but I pulled my hand away. I still love you, Aria. This was just a mistake, a terrible mistake. If you can forgive me, I promise I'll end things with Natalie. We can work through this, go to counseling. His words felt like another betrayal. Even now, he was trying to manipulate the situation, suddenly claiming he would choose me when caught red-handed. I looked at him, and saw a stranger, not the man I had loved and trusted for 8 years. Natalie wiped at her tears, her voice small. The texts were my idea. Derek didn't know about them. She looked at me with pleading eyes. I was desperate. I've always lived in your shadow, Aria. You've always had everything I wanted. The perfect job, the perfect husband, the perfect life. For once I wanted something that was mine. So you took my husband, I asked incredulously. The one person who vowed to be faithful to me, that was your solution. I knew it was wrong, she admitted. But I couldn't help my feelings, and Derek felt the same way. Derek shot her an angry look, clearly not wanting her to speak for him. It's complicated, Aria. I got confused. Natalie was here all the time, and you were so busy with work and one thing led to another. His voice trailed off as he realized how pathetic his excuses sounded. I stood up slowly, gathering the evidence back into the folder. I want you both out of my house. Tonight. Pack your things and leave. They both started protesting at once, Derek claiming it was his house too, Natalie begging for a chance to explain further. I held up my hand, silencing them. Derek, this is legally my house too, and I have documentation of your infidelity. If you want to contest this in court, my lawyer will be happy to present all of this evidence. As for you, Natalie, I turned to my sister. You are no longer welcome in my home or my life. I called my parents next with Derek and Natalie still sitting at the table. I explained everything, my voice surprisingly calm as I detailed their betrayal. My father's anger was palpable even through the phone, and my mother sobbed quietly. They both assured me of their support and promised to come over the next day. After hanging up, I looked at Derek and Natalie still frozen in place. I've changed the Wi-Fi password, and I'll be changing the locks tomorrow. You have 1 hour to pack essential items and leave. You can arrange to collect the rest of your belongings later this week when I'm not here. Derek finally seemed to grasp the reality of the situation. You're really doing this, throwing away 8 years of marriage without even trying to work it out. You threw it away, Derek, I replied, my voice ice cold. The moment you decided my sister was more important than our vows. Now get out of my house. I stood in the doorway watching as they gathered their things in stunned silence. Natalie tried one more time to speak to me as she passed by with her suitcase, but I turned away, refusing to give her another chance to manipulate me. Derek lingered on the porch after Natalie got into the car, looking back at me with what appeared to be genuine regret. I never wanted it to end like this, he said softly. Neither did I replied before closing the door on my marriage and the life I thought I had. That night alone in my house, I cried until there were no tears left. Then I changed all the locks, deleted Derek's access to our shared accounts, and began the process of rebuilding my life from the ashes of their betrayal. The days following the confrontation were the darkest I've ever experienced. After Derek and Natalie left, I spent the first night alternating between periods of numbness and overwhelming grief. I slept on the couch, unable to face our bedroom with its memories of a marriage I now questioned whether had ever been real. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed, then contacted my bank to secure my financial accounts. My lawyer helped me begin the divorce proceedings, advising me to document everything and maintain minimal contact with Derek, except through legal channels. I took a week off work, explaining to my boss that I was dealing with a personal crisis. My parents arrived that afternoon, my father's face etched with anger, my mother's eyes swollen from crying. They helped me pack up Derek's remaining belongings and move them to the garage, where he could collect them without entering the house. My mother cleaned out Natalie's room, placing her things in boxes with clinical efficiency, her usual warmth toward her younger daughter replaced by a cold determination. "I never thought she could do something like this," my mother said quietly as she sealed a box of Natalie's clothes. "Where did we go wrong with her?" "You didn't," I assured her, touching her shoulder gently. "Natalie made her choices. This isn't your fault." My father was more vocal in his anger. "I'll never speak to her again," he declared, pacing the kitchen. "And as for Derek, if he shows his face around me, I can't be responsible for what happens." "Dad, please," I said, exhausted. "I need you to be calm. I can't handle more drama right now." He softened immediately, pulling me into a hug. "You're right, sweetheart. This is about you, not my anger. Whatever you need, we're here." What I needed most in those early days was simply their presence. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. My parents stayed with me for a week, cooking meals I barely ate, answering the door when friends came by with casseroles and concerned faces screening my calls when both Derek and Natalie began their campaigns of apology. Derek's approach was persistent, almost aggressive. He sent dozens of text messages declaring his love, claiming the affair was a terrible mistake, begging for another chance. He left tearful voicemails, sent flowers that I immediately threw away, and even tried to enlist mutual friends to speak on his behalf. When these tactics didn't work, he switched to anger, accusing me of overreacting and refusing to work on our marriage. Natalie's approach was different but equally manipulative. Her messages were filled with self-loathing and declarations that she didn't deserve forgiveness but couldn't bear to lose her sister. She wrote long emails detailing her history of jealousy and insecurity, as if understanding the psychological roots of her betrayal should somehow mitigate its impact. When I didn't respond, she showed up at my parents' house only to be turned away by my father, who for the first time in her life refused to soften toward her tears. After my parents returned home, Sarah moved in temporarily to keep me company. Her practical approach to heartbreak was exactly what I needed. She helped me create a schedule to ensure I ate regularly, slept at reasonable hours, and got some exercise. When I was ready to return to work, she drove me there and picked me up, correctly guessing that Derek might try to ambush me in the parking lot. He did twice before security warned him to stay away. During this time, I received an unexpected call from James, Natalie's ex-boyfriend. He had heard about what happened through mutual friends and wanted to check on me. "I'm so sorry, Aria," he said, his voice kind. "I had no idea when Natalie broke up with me. I never suspected it was because of Derek." We met for coffee, and James shared his own experience of betrayal and recovery. He had been blindsided by Natalie's sudden decision to end their relationship, never imagining she had developed feelings for my husband. Our shared pain created an unexpected bond, and James became a supportive friend during my healing process. About 2 months after the confrontation, I joined a support group for people going through difficult divorces. Sitting in a circle of strangers who understood exactly what I was feeling was remarkably healing. I listened to their stories of betrayal and survival, shared my own experience, and for the first time, began to see a future beyond my pain. One woman in the group, Eleanor, had been through a similar situation with her sister and husband 5 years earlier. She now had a successful career, a new relationship, and a hard-won wisdom that gave me hope. "The day will come," she told me after a particularly difficult session, "when you'll go 24 hours without thinking about them. Then a whole week. Eventually they'll be just people from your past, not the center of your pain." I couldn't imagine such a day, but I held on to her words like a promise. With the encouragement of my support group, I also began seeing a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that my feelings of shame and inadequacy were common reactions despite being irrational. She guided me through exercises to reconnect with my self-worth and establish healthy boundaries. "What happened wasn't a reflection on you," she reminded me often. "It was a reflection of their character, not yours." 6 months after discovering the affair, my divorce was finalized. The process was surprisingly straightforward once Derek realized I had irrefutable evidence of his infidelity and wouldn't back down. We sold the house, divided our assets, and officially ended our 8-year marriage with signatures on legal documents that felt both devastating and liberating. On the day the divorce was finalized, I stood outside the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. Sarah waited nearby, ready to take me to a divorce celebration dinner she had planned with a few close friends. "How do you feel?" she asked, linking her arm through mine. I considered the question carefully. "Like I'm finally ready to start healing." And I was. The road ahead would still be challenging with good days and bad, but for the first time I could envision a life rebuilt from the ruins, perhaps even stronger than before. A year after discovering Derek and Natalie's betrayal, I stood in my new apartment surrounded by friends celebrating my housewarming party. The space was entirely mine, decorated exactly as I wanted, with no compromises or considerations for anyone else's taste. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over downtown Denver, and I had transformed the second bedroom into a home office where I was building a small financial consulting business of my own. The journey to this point had been arduous but transformative. The first few months after the divorce were a blur of grief and anger. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, replaying every moment of my marriage, and wondering what signs I had missed. Sometimes I would drive past our old house, now owned by a young family, and feel a pang of loss for the life I had planned there. Other days I would be overwhelmed by rage so intense it frightened me. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the good days began to outnumber the bad. I threw myself into my work, earning a promotion and taking on challenging projects that demanded my full attention. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my marriage and made new ones through a hiking group and a book club. I traveled solo for the first time, spending 2 weeks exploring the Pacific Northwest, making decisions based solely on what I wanted to do each day. Throughout this time, both Derek and Natalie continued their attempts to reconnect, though, with decreasing frequency as they realized I was serious about cutting them from my life. 6 months after our confrontation, I heard from mutual friends that their relationship had imploded spectacularly. Apparently, the excitement of their forbidden affair hadn't translated well into day-to-day reality, especially with the weight of guilt and damaged reputations hanging over them. Derek moved to Chicago for a fresh start with a new architectural firm. He sent me one final email before leaving a lengthy apology that seemed more focused on absolving himself than acknowledging my pain. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. Natalie tried more persistently to reconcile, sending birthday cards, Christmas gifts, and occasionally showing up at places she knew I frequented. Each time I maintained firm boundaries, eventually making it clear through a brief direct message that I had no interest in rebuilding our relationship. "I understand you want forgiveness," I wrote. "But some things can't be undone, and some relationships can't be repaired. Please respect my decision to move forward without you in my life." Surprisingly, my relationship with James, Natalie's ex-boyfriend, developed into a meaningful friendship. We met for coffee every few weeks, sharing our healing journeys and supporting each other's growth. There was never any romantic interest between us, but rather a unique understanding that only someone who had been hurt by the same person could truly comprehend. My parents struggled with their own healing process. My father maintained his vow never to speak to Natalie again, while my mother vacillated between anger and grief over essentially losing a daughter. During one particularly difficult conversation, my mother asked if I would ever consider forgiving Natalie. "I don't know, Mom," I answered honestly. "Maybe someday I'll reach a point where I've let go of the anger, but that doesn't mean I'll want her back in my life. Some betrayals change things forever." My mother nodded sadly. "I understand. I just never imagined our family would be broken like this." "We're not broken," I assured her, taking her hand. "We're just reconfigured, and we're going to be okay." My support group and therapy sessions remained constants in my life, though I gradually needed them less frequently. Dr. Martinez helped me work through the deep-seated trust issues that the betrayal had created, preparing me for the possibility of future relationships. The other members of my support group became close friends, our bond formed through shared understanding of each other's pain and resilience. Eleanor, who had predicted I would eventually go days without thinking about the betrayal, was right. About 9 months after the divorce, I realized one evening that I had gone an entire weekend without Derek or Natalie crossing my mind. It wasn't that I had forgotten what happened, but rather that it no longer dominated my consciousness. The pain had transformed from an acute, constant agony to an occasional dull ache that I could acknowledge and then set aside. My professional life flourished during this time of personal rebuilding. The focus and determination I channeled into my work led to recognition within my firm and eventually an opportunity to start my own consulting practice specializing in financial planning for women going through major life transitions. My experience had given me insight into the unique challenges faced by women navigating divorce, and I found purpose in helping others secure their financial futures during difficult times. As I looked around my housewarming party at the friends who had supported me through the darkest period of my life, I felt a profound gratitude. Sarah was in the kitchen mixing drinks and laughing with colleagues from my old firm. My parents were chatting with neighbors from my new building. James had brought his new girlfriend, a kind-hearted teacher, who knew our history and treated our friendship with respect. Even a few members of my support group had come to celebrate this milestone. Later that evening, after most guests had left, Sarah and I stood on my small balcony looking at the city lights. "Would you ever have imagined a year ago that you'd be here?" she asked, gesturing to the apartment and the new life it represented. I shook my head. "Never. I thought my life was over when I found those texts. And now," I smiled, feeling the cool evening air on my face, "now I know it was just beginning." The betrayal by Derek and Natalie taught me painful but valuable lessons. I learned that sometimes the people we trust the most are capable of causing the deepest wounds. I discovered that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who stand beside us in our darkest moments. Most importantly, I realized that my capacity for resilience was far greater than I had ever imagined. The experience fundamentally changed how I approach relationships. I'm more cautious now, yes, but also more authentic. I've learned to trust my instincts, to set firm boundaries, and to value myself enough to walk away from situations that don't serve my well-being. I no longer fear being alone because I've discovered that solitude is far preferable to a relationship built on lies. Forgiveness remains a complicated journey. I've come to understand that forgiveness isn't a single decision, but a process that unfolds over time. I've forgiven Derek and Natalie not for their benefit, but for my own peace of mind. This doesn't mean I want them back in my life or that I excuse their actions, but rather that I've chosen not to let the bitterness consume me. If there's one thing I would share with others facing similar betrayal, it's this: the people who hurt you don't get to decide how your story ends. You do. In the aftermath of betrayal, you have the power to rebuild, to redefine, and ultimately to reclaim your life on your own terms. Sometimes I think about that night I discovered the fake divorce texts, how devastated I felt when I realized the depth of their deception. If I could go back and speak to that version of myself, I would tell her that although the pain ahead is immense, she will not only survive it, but will emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself than ever before. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've experienced betrayal in your own life, I hope my journey gives you hope that healing is possible. I'm curious to know, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own self-respect? What helped you make that decision? Please share in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Remember, your story isn't over yet, and the best chapters may still be unwritten.